Welcome back, and we're still on muscle cars. Yeah, we've done the obvious ones. Let's do the not so obvious ones. We're going to be looking at AMC, Buick, Mercury, and something completely left field. Stay tuned. Yes, if you watched the first episode and thought I left something out, then maybe it's in this episode. You never know. And if it's not, then drop me a line in the comments. Be glad to hear from you, and maybe we'll do a third episode of ones I forgot. So, talking of left field, I was considering including a TVR. Yes, you know I love my TVRs, because it's kind of a muscle car, but then it kind of isn't really. It's more of a sports car. So if we were going to include a TVR, we'd have to include a Cobra, and again, yeah, two-seater sports car really, even if it has got a ludicrously large engine in it. So yeah, we're not going to include that. Doesn't mean there won't be something from the Great British Isles. Stay tuned. Alright, let's do this alphabetically. Let's start with AMC. Sadly short-lived production, and underrated, possibly, but pretty cool. And during its short lifespan, it's one of the rare ones that actually, I think, got better over time. I mean, none of them are bad looking, but as time went on, they kind of just tweaked and tuned various bits of the styling, and I think ended up with a really nice looking muscle car. And in the short period it was available, they upped the V8 capacity and power from 225 originally, brake horsepower that is, to over 300. So pretty impressive car actually, and very popular with racers too. That's got to say something about it, hasn't it? Anyway, moving along the alphabet to B for Buick. Slightly dubious if any of these are really muscle cars. I don't know, but certainly the Skylark, at least in the 70s, was considered as such, but I'm not really a fan of that. And then, of course, much later in the 80s, there was the Grand National. Again, not sure if that qualifies as a muscle car with a V6 turbo, but it was certainly pretty rapid for the time. So none of those. I'm going for the Riviera. As I say, dubious whether it's a muscle car or not, really. It was kind of a luxury car. And I think I'm right in saying the name originally began in the 50s, introduced to the Buick Electra, which is a fabulous looking car. Perhaps we should do an episode on fabulous fins from the 50s. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, the Riviera itself came out, I think, in early 60s. And again, made famous in film by our friend Nicolas Cage. This particular era of the Riviera was, I think we can qualify it as a muscle car. Certainly a mean-looking machine. And yes, the 65 is my personal preference. When they added the kind of lights to the side with the covers, that's the one in the Nicolas Cage film, and it's probably the coolest. Back end, not so much, a bit lazy really. Don't know what else to say about it really, apart from, as usual, it deteriorated over the years. The 70s it grew rather large indeed, although you got to love that boat tail, that's pretty cool. But it just got worse and worse and just deteriorated into some kind of sad sedan. So we won't dwell on that any longer. Boy, we're ripping through these veritably, aren't we? And so on to the letter C. C for Cougar. Well, I kind of had one of these once, but not one of the nicer ones as far as I'm concerned anyway. Yeah, bit of an old boat. Now, as per usual, it's the earlier ones that are better in my opinion. Perfect kind of muscle car shape. Those front lights that blend into the grille with the covers, I think, are just superb. Really mean looking. Not bad rear end, as rear ends go. And what I particularly like about it is that it kind of ties in with that front grille Same kind of styling and everything, so that's rather a nice touch. Anyway, in the 70s they started messing it up a bit with a front radiator, which kind of ruined that whole look and just got progressively larger. In the 80s it got worse. I could only find this one picture, or I could only bear to look at this one picture, and then the 90s worse again. Until the early 2000s, where they just decided to take a Ford Mondeo and stick a Cougar badge on it, I guess. Yeah, shame. So, that's the Mercury Cougar. And that's the end of the American stuff. If you think I missed anything critical, obviously let me know. Maybe we'll do another episode. But we're moving on to other regions. And of course, we could have gone to Australia, where I understand muscle cars were equally popular. I watched a video the other night, actually, and seems like they were whipping your boys' asses, with the performance at least, but not the looks so much. So I think the Americans had it right with the looks. So we're not going to take a look at any of the Australian offerings, despite the fact that performance was exceptional, apparently. Instead, we're heading back across the pond to the United Kingdom, not known for muscle cars, probably termed as GTs or Grand Tours at the time. Although the first one was really heralded as a British muscle car, despite the badge. Yes, folks, none other than Aston Martin, purveyor of luxury sports, Grand Tourers and muscle cars. Well, I think it qualifies, and here's why. Based on the DBS, which was introduced in 1967, specifically to house the new Aston Martin V8, as the DB6 didn't have enough room for it. Initially, the DBS had the straight 6 from the DB6, but it had been specifically designed to house the V8, which came later. With the research I did, it seems to be some conflicting information as to when the V8 actually came along, and when the Vantage came along, and the Vantage was also available with the straight 6 as well as the V8. If anyone out there can clarify this muddle, please let me know. Anyway, we're talking about this Vantage. With a comfortably sub 6 second 0 to 60 time, it was one of the fastest cars in the world. In fact, the fastest production 4-seater. Quicker than most of the sports cars at the time, like Ferrari, etc. And doubtless quicker than any of the American muscle cars at the time, if there were any really in the late 70s. But it's not the performance figures alone, I think, that qualify it as a muscle car. It really kind of has the look as well. Aggressive front grille, muscular rear haunches, it's got everything. So this was Aston's flagship for quite some time. Reintroduced again in the 90s with the Virage Vantage. Again, a brute of a car, but at the same time not quite as pretty as the first one, because the Virage was just a bit of a mess all round, really. Anyway, Aston Martin. So surely that must be it for the British Isles offerings. Not in my opinion. A somewhat lesser known brand, Jensen, produced the Interceptor. And this had a monstrous 7-litre engine. That's not very British, is it? And as I understand it, although I might be wrong, it was the first 4-wheel drive production car. So stick that in your pipe, Audi. Again, technically, it probably classified as a GT Grand Tourer. I think it qualifies as a muscle car with a 7.2-litre engine. Yeah, it's not exactly classic kind of muscle car shape, although, you know, it's got the aggressive front end for sure, but a rather interesting rear end, to say the least. Sadly, Jensen are no longer around, although there have been a couple of attempts to revive the brand. But they were always an interesting manufacturer. So that's about it. Yeah, 5 more muscle cars, couple from the British Isles. But wait, I've got one more. Another unlikely brand for sure, being Vauxhall. Yes, not known for muscle cars really, more sales reps cars and hot hatches and stuff like that. Although back in the day there was the Vauxhall Victor, I suppose. That was quite a beast. But this is a much later vehicle and a collaboration with another manufacturer, again, who are also not known for muscle cars, although they have dabbled helping the likes of Corvette in the past and others. In fact, there's not many manufacturers in the world that haven't come to these people at some point for a little help with performance and handling. Yes, of course I'm talking about Lotus. I'm even wearing the shirt. Yeah, and specifically I'm talking about the Lotus Carlton. I know it's pushing it a bit on the muscle car front, but, you know, I mean, we did look at the Monaro and the Holden, whatever. So, yeah, I think we can squeeze this one in, mainly because it's just a brute of a car. Fantastic performance, so much so that government tried to ban it, I think. Favoured by the British criminal contingent, the cops couldn't keep up with it. I mean, honestly, it's not dissimilar to the Buick Grand National that we dismissed as not being a muscle car, so it's a bit unfair to include it. And by similar, I mean, you know, it's a 3.6 litre twin turbo, not a massive block. But nevertheless, phenomenally fast. 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds, I believe, and top speed of 180 reportedly. Lotus went on to do some other work with Vauxhall, like the VX220 that we've covered in another episode based on the Elise. And yeah, that's not the first time they've collaborated with other manufacturers in a big way, in a dual brand like the Lotus Cortinas of the 60s and 70s. So perhaps a rather iffy final choice, but I just thought I'd squeeze it in there. So thanks as always for watching. If you thought the video was any good, give it a thumbs up, subscribe down here if you haven't already. And if you did think I missed some obvious choices, then let me know, and maybe we'll do another episode on those. And of course, encourage others to watch my lunacy.